there, warm welcome. You're watching Decoding Now with me, Meghna Deka. Well, tonight we are going to ask you, can planes really fly on ethanol or alcohol, as many people are saying? Well, this is the dream of India's fuel future that we are going to be decoding for you tonight. Well, the center has green flagged greener aviation fuel, opening the door to ethanol blends in jet fuel as well. Well, this pitch is quite clear. Cut carbon, curb the crude oil imports, and boost energy security of India. After all, the stakes are very high. 85% of the crude oil that we use in India is imported. And the ongoing Hormuz blockade has led to a major supply disruptions. Aviation was one of the hardest hit since jet fuel is a massive cost for airlines. So enter ethanol, a homegrown alternative that's already powering cars in blended forms, and now it's being tested for the skies as well, but not without turbulence. In fact, critics ask, can alcohol be used to fly planes? Well, there is an entire meme fest which is going around it, that it is going to trigger off performance issues, that there is an entire meme fest that you can see on your screens we'll be telling you about. We'll also tell you why the Sarkar says that these fears and the panic is completely unfounded. So is this India's green breakthrough, or is it a high-altitude gamble? And if planes are next, will cars go even further down the ethanol road? All of this is going to be decoded right here on Decoding Now. First, let's decode the green push by the government. Well, Sustainable Aviation Fuel, SAF, is now going to be part of the regulated ATF. Amendment to the ATF regulations have officially been notified as of yesterday. This move aligns with the global SAF standards as well, and it is a huge boost to India's green aviation transitions. The targets that have been set is 1% by 2027, 2% by 2028, and 5% by 2030, which means that the blend of 1% will happen in international flights only by 2027, and the maximum so far as has been envisaged is 5% blending in the aviation fuel, which is only going to be by 2030 and only in international flights, not domestic. We're going to get into more details of that. But the question is, why switch from ATF to ethanol blends? Well, let's explain that. The first reason is to cut the emissions. Second is to decarbonize aviation as a sector, to reduce oil imports, and fourth, to comply with global routes and the global standards to go green. But it's not just happening immediately. As I was telling you, there is an entire timeline that you can see on your screens. Ethanol blending timelines are already set for only international flights. 1%, as you can see on your screens, by 2027, 2% by 2028, and a 5% blend of ethanol by 2030. The rest continues to be ATF. But what really is ATF? What's the difference between an SAF and an ATF, which we are using currently, many would ask. So let's explain to you what exactly it is. Sustainable Aviation Fuel. That's SAF. It is a cleaner alternative fuel for all aircrafts. However, the aviation turbine fuel, which is currently being used, is a standard jet fuel, which is used in all aircraft, even as we speak. The SAF is, however, made from renewable sources, which is why it is so very coveted. The ATF, which we are using currently, is derived from crude oil, which is, of course, as we all know, a fossil fuel. The third difference is that when it comes to SAF, it is derived from cooking oil, from agri-waste, something which is available in India aplenty. ATF, however, provides high energy density. When it comes to SAF, the benefit is that, of course, it is going to be reducing carbon emissions as well in aviation sector. But when it comes to ATF, it powers commercial and military aircraft. It is currently being used and definitely leaves a big carbon footprint. So there has been a lot of criticism also by this move of the government. It is the Congress which has called it catastrophic. Why? Well, let's explain to you the concerns that they have raised. The first concern is that ethanol's energy density is much lower than that of ATF. They've also said that it can impact the engine during takeoff. Second is the efficiency of it all, which is fuel consumption of an aircraft, Congress says, is going to be rising. The third concern they've raised is that of engine failure, saying ethanol is hygroscopic. It can possibly clog the fuel lines as well. Fourth concern is that of leakage. Congress has said that solvent properties can possibly cause contamination. However, the centre has clarified point-by-point rebuttal that has been given, fears that are completely unfounded. And this is the reason why, that SAF hydrocarbons are similar to ATF. Second assurance is that it is fully compatible with plain engines. Third assurance is that it will not alter the safety or the performance of an aircraft. Also that it is as per the international standards which have been set by the ICAO. Rigorous testing is going to be done. The entire process is going to be followed to the T. Also, they have said that similar steps, after all, have been undertaken globally as well. So this is not the first time that we are looking at an ethanol blend in aviation. But there are concerns. Are these concerns valid, or is this merely fear-mongering? Let's now tell you what exactly it is that the experts are saying, so that we can keep the politics aside. Experts are saying that modern engines can handle ethanol blending. Blending will not cause engine issues. They also say that fuel quality will have to be tested. Ethanol will not be directly mixed with jet fuel. Ethanol will be processed into sustainable aviation fuel. It's not just a directly being used. It's not 100%. It's merely 1% by 2027. Also, modern jets can operate with 50% SAF blends. We're not going there yet, but it is possible. Experts also point out that the real concern is that of supply and production, that 40 countries are already using SAF fuel in their aviation sectors and in aircrafts. So remember, ethanol blends for airplanes, as I was just telling you, is not a new phenomenon. So what really is it being done globally? Let's tell you the nations which have already moved towards it in a phased manner. The entire European Union, they project that by 2030, there'll be 6% blend of ethanol in airplane fuel. Also, there's going to be 60% blending by 2050. Huge targets there. In the United Kingdom, 10% of blends is what they are expecting to achieve by 2030. 22% of blends by 2040 is the target. Japan too, 10% of blending by 2030 is the target that they have set. In Singapore, it is 1% blends by 2026, 3 to 5% of blends by 2030. So these, as you can see, are global targets, not just here in India. But not just this. Many are asking, are cars also going to be going green? Well, the government is all set to issue draft rules for A85. What does that mean? A blend which contains 85% ethanol and 15% petrol. Well, from 1st of April, 20% or E20 as it is called, 20% ethanol blending in petrol is going to become mandatory. Ethanol is, remember, a biofuel that is being derived from crops such as sugarcane, maize and grains, as I was telling you. This has all led to a massive meme fest over ethanol. Many are saying that it's linked to alcohol. Well, in fact, let's get you some of the memes that have been doing the rounds. We are going to put it out. There you have it. You have a pilot sitting back and saying, I'm fine. And then you have a plane which is running on 100% ethanol power. And then the pilot says, now the plane will sway and dance in the air as well. The refuel, refresh buttons are there. Then you have another car there saying 100% ethanol blending. My car is about to have a better social life than me. At this rate, we'll need to install breathalyzers for the cars as well. Party fuel, as they are calling ethanol, saying that, well, it is alcohol. Ethanol is the big memes which are coming in. That seems to be the overriding fear. In fact, let's show you the next one. There you have it on your screens. You have a lady in an airplane in this meme saying, excuse me, do you have any sugarcane juice, and you have the cabin crew telling us, sorry ma'am, it's all been poured into the fuel tank. Those are the kind of memes coming in. The next one, there you have it on your screen, saying, if it is 100% ethanol, what is it that you're going to blend it with? Keep it 99.99 and add 2 drops of at least petrol. This, of course, is regarding cars, something that Union Minister Nitin Gadkari had said, saying that India will eventually be moving towards 100% ethanol. Of course, there are no timelines for that. And then you have a man on a bullock cart saying, we are headed towards greener, environment-friendly future. Anyway, just wait for it. And hashtag development. Well, those are the meme fets, but it is a serious issue. So let me put that across to our panelists. Today, joining us on the show, we have Vimlendu Jha, environmentalist. Sanjay Lazar is also joining us, an aviation expert and CEO of Aviation. In fact, Sanjay Lazar, I'm going to start with you. I mean, the jokes and the memes aside, of course, we're all enjoying that. It's been going on for a week now. But jokes aside, this is a very serious issue because this is about aviation safety and security that we are talking about. Yes, it's good to be going green, but is there a downside to blends in aviation fuel?
Good evening, Meghna. Thank you for having me on your show, and good evening to your viewers. It's amazing that I hear, the opposition parties and political parties raising this bogey. We have to understand that the first flight with biofuel took off in 2008. That's 16, 18 years. I mean, we're in 2026. The world has moved to environmentally friendly fuels. Airlines, like you said, we've had 40 countries, there are 50 airlines, almost 125 airports that use. We have had till January this year, Meghna, 360,000 flights operated with SAF. Some countries use a 50% blend. We are crying about a 1% and a 2% blend. I mean, and who on earth, do you know in the last 20 years of using biofuel and SAF, there's not been a single accident. There's not been a single incident. So, I mean, these politicians are just making hay out of nothing. So, first of all, banish the thought. This is as safe can be. It is environmentally friendly. It's been already tested and tried across the world. Yes, there is a concern whether our standard of biofuel or the standard of SAF fuel that we make will match up to the global standards. I also want to point this out to you. Over the last 6 years, Indian airlines have tested this. Indian Air Force has tested it. SpiceJet has tested imported fuels. Indigo has tested imported fuels. Air Asia tested it. Air India Express has tested it. Vistara has tested it. I mean, barring the actual Air India, everybody else has flown aircraft on test flights. Now we have gazetted it and we're going into large-scale production, hopefully. So I have two concerns. One is quality of product, and second is whether we can produce enough.
I'm just going to come back to you, circle back on the quality of it as well. Let me bring in Vimlendu Jha. Vimlendu, you've been this crusader for environment, for going green, a step in the right direction, would you say? Or many have said, or rather, there is a lot of fear mongering that this may just be a gamble at high altitude.
See, security, safety are, of course, concerns, but that's not, I'm not an expert, I'm not an aviation expert per se, and therefore I would really reserve my comments there. But with regard to environment also, I think it's very, very important that the aviation sector has a lot of contribution, a lot of carbon contribution, and it needs to decarbonize. So therefore, any step in that direction that actually looks at decarbonizing aviation sector is a welcome move. The only thing is that we need to have a word of caution here, or a sense of caution here, that anything that is actually called biofuel is not necessarily green fuel. That's also a largely a greenwashing thing that we think that every ethanol is not green. So we need to understand, a lot of times they give the example of Brazil, that look at Brazil, that it actually has a lot of ethanol and their fuel regime has that. We need to understand that when the production, the crop production, largely when we talk about ethanol in India, we talk about sugarcane. And we also know that sugarcane, the primary crop that actually brings in ethanol, is actually very, very water intensive. So unless and until we look at ethanol, which of course the end of the tunnel, of course, it might look as if it's all green, but the beginning of the tunnel, wherefore your crop system, your life cycle of that ethanol, if actually consumes a lot of water. So Brazil grows its crops through rain, and we actually irrigate. So largely, if you talk about increasing production of ethanol, we talk about increasing production of sugarcane or food grains in that sense, and therefore we are actually looking at either the natural forest being perhaps cleaned to grow more, or more and more stress on the groundwater. So theoretically, of course, it sounds very good. It sounds bio. It sounds green fuel in that sense. But the actual life cycle analysis is extremely important. But indeed, do we need to really make such experiments, interventions, or thought in that direction? Absolutely. I think it's high time that if India needs to reach net zero overall, and overall look at it shows its intent with regard to climate change, it will have to do many, many more things. So therefore, I support going away from fossil fuel, but this greenwashing also we need to be a little bit cautious about, because at the end of the day, if sugarcane manufacturing, and sugarcane is the main primary crop for ethanol, and sugarcane is something that's actually depleting your groundwater table, and if sugarcane is actually grown through irrigation system rather than rain-fed, then it's a point of concern, and therefore it's not as bio or as green that it claims to be.
Oh, that's a very interesting point that you've raised there. We are going to come back to you. Sanjay Lazar, you had talked about the quality of this fuel that we are going to be making, the hydrocarbons, and the quality of SAF. The government, in its press release just yesterday, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has clarified, saying that we are going to be meeting all the standards of ICAO. What really are the checks and balances in place?
Megha, the ICAO has brought in, of course, it's a UN mandate of CORSIA, and therefore India really did not have a choice, frankly. Vimlendu is right. We have a huge carbon footprint, and we're currently at 600-700 aircraft. We're going to go to 2,000-3,000 aircraft, 300 airports. We'll be the third largest aviation market in the world in a few months or few years from now. We need to cut this down. And we need to save the environment. I mean, the whole world is looking at it. You have a number of European airports where they've cracked down on this. Therefore, India had to move to this. My fear is, and I take Vimlendu's point on sugarcane and ethanol, but mind you, there are a number of types of SAF fuel, and we have allowed manufactured hydrocarbons as well in the chain. So it will depend on the chain as well that they
chemically made ones, you mean? If you can just explain to us.
Very much so.
Yeah. You must explain for the benefit of our viewers. There are two ways of making it. One is via these natural fibers, grains, sugarcane, so on and so forth. And the second is chemical, right?
Yeah. And I do believe that we will go for the chemical one to start with.
Okay.
Rather than the ethanol blend right away. They will test it. That's why they're going with the 1%, 2%, 3%. But when you have to go to 20 and 30%, where it would make an overall difference in the cost of ATF as well as the footprint in a large span, I do believe ethanol will come in. I do believe sugarcane will be brought in because we do produce a lot. Yes, we do use water for it. But, I'd much rather use water because we have so many oceans around us rather than, just burn fuel, which we're importing. The other important aspect, which I said of quality, is because, we always know that there's something suspect. Dal mein kuch kala hai in India. There's always that. So that's been a general concern, not typically for an aircraft, because aircrafts, they check them thoroughly. There's testing before each time they load the fuel and stuff like that. So I do believe we'll be on safe ground there. But I think also...
You're right. In India, we are always very suspicious, but that's perhaps a sign of a thriving democracy. Every time anything comes up, there are voices which are going to raise questions. It's up to the viewers, which is why we do explainers such as Decoding Now, so that the viewer gets all the information, you can hear all the experts, and they can decide for themselves. This is as democratic as it gets. But Vimlendu, of course, it's not just about ATF and now blended fuels for aircrafts. We are also looking at E20, E85, perhaps even E100. Many have asked, how can it be blended if it's 100? But that aside, we are moving towards that. Would that be a concern for you as an environmentalist if we even start using that extensively in cars, in bikes, as the push has been?
See, one is the impact that, there's a lot of chatter last couple of months or last couple of years in terms of the fuel efficiency or the quality of engine and so on and so forth. So that's where the automobile experts can actually weigh in and then tell us exactly if ethanol blended fuel really impacts their overall average and overall machine and so on and so forth.
Apparently, it consumes more
my point
if it is
only
blended.
limited. Of course, we need to... Absolutely. And therefore, for me, the concern is something else. My concern is that indeed we need to really move away from fossil fuel in that sense. And that's the argument also with regard to electric vehicles that I'll actually make in the same breath. But the thing is that it needs to be waste-based. I think it's very, very important that rather than actually looking at fresh crops or cutting down our forest or looking at production of a certain crop, be it grain or sugarcane, we need to understand that if we're looking at air pollution being one of the big crises here in northern India, and we talk about crop residue or the burning of crop residue actually has a significant contribution, perhaps around almost 8 to 10% on an annual average. So we need to really become a master in that space. So we should get into ethanol, but ethanol that is not based on cutting down more forests or really looking at water-intensive crops, but looking at waste-based. So therefore, second-generation leadership of ethanol is what India should actually look at. So similarly, like for example, when we talk about electric vehicles, we say that we are actually moving ourselves.
You're absolutely right. That yes, it's a positive step, but let's take it cautiously because yes, we want to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel, but we also want to conserve our water tables and our greens as well, because the two of them may just be an antithesis depending on how this ethanol blend is going to be made. The second stage is where we really need to master it. Really appreciated Vimlendu Jha as well as Sanjay Lazar for joining us and explaining and decoding all of that for our viewers. But with that, let's move on in the bulletin. Big breaking news which is coming in. Well, it is the final push for phase 2 of the high-stakes West Bengal elections.